If you know someone that is still enjoying their coffee outside, please ask them to join us inside. We are about 3 minutes or 2 minutes over time. Excuse me. I like the silence. It's a sign that we're ready to engage and talk about data, MzansiXchange, special exchange ideas. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, distinguished speakers, good morning and welcome to a highly anticipated, I should emphasize, MzansiXchange pilot launch program. We are so excited and thrilled to have you today at the capital main lane where innovation definitely meets collaboration, and this is in the heart of our nation in the capital city of Pretoria. My name is Vusi Maupa, and I'll try my best to direct the program. I've been tasked to ensure that the program runs smoothly today as a program director. And let me let you know that today we are not just launching a program, and that's why you are here. We are igniting a vision for a brighter future for digital public infrastructure. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we will explore groundbreaking ideas from our panelists. We will engage in thought-provoking discourses and discussions, and of course, pave the way for a transformative change that will undoubtedly benefit all South Africans. Before we dive into the business of the day, I'd like to remind you to please, if you want to stay connected with us throughout today, there is a Wi-Fi that has been provided for you. So you can enter the password MzansiXchange on the MzansiXchange channel or profile. So the slight mistake there, instead of Mzansi with an S, they have Mzansi with a Z. So when you put a password, just use MZANZI, that is MzansiXchange, that will get you logged in and be able to interact on the socials or wherever you are interacting at. But whether you have your Wi-Fi connected or not, please ensure that you are always having your phone or your gadgets on silent. The last sound that we want to have here today is this one. It gives a feeling that we are about to go to work, and today we are not here to work, but we are here to interact, exchange ideas, and of course, collaborate in what we want to achieve in this MzansiXchange pilot launch program. So, with that said, please have your phones on silent. Minimize, where possible, the movements in the room, particularly when the speaker is on the floor, so we can have undivided attention when they do so. Coffee stations are outside. You'll be given a chance to use those coffee stations when the time comes. Also, if you want to jump to a bathroom from time to time, as you walk out, on your right, just after the reception, on your left, there are bathrooms there for you to utilize. And during lunch, just before lunch, we'll let you know where the lunch will be served at the restaurant within here. By the way, we are also live streaming in this event on our socials. So a warm welcome. Where's the main camera? Is that the one? Are they feeding from there? Right. So a warm welcome to our online audience for joining us from across the country and by extension across the globe. Your participation today is very important and invaluable. We encourage you to engage with us throughout the day. So we'll find ways to ensure that we get those engagements from you if you want to interact with us. So stay put online. We are here until later in the day. And once again, thank you so much for joining us. And also thank you for joining us today here in person. You sacrificed your time driving in the Pretoria traffic for you to be here. So we are very thankful for you to be here. Now, to the business of the day, and without any further waste of time, let's kickstart this incredible journey that we're here for. And please join me in welcoming our first speaker for the day, that is Dr. Duncan Peterson, the Director General of the National Treasury, who's going to give us a keynote address to make us feel welcomed and set the tone for us. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a big round of applause for Dr. Peterson.
Good morning, everyone. Just give me a chance to set this up. I normally talk from pieces of paper, but DG Tommy from Home Affairs is here today, and he exclusively uses an iPad. So I thought today, DG Tommy, is the day that I'm going to join you in the 21st century. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It really is my privilege to welcome all of you to the MzansiXchange pilot launch, and thank you for being here today to mark this very important milestone along with the rest of us. My job here is simple. It's just to sketch the context. Then we will go into a more detailed presentation by Ayanda, and of course our panel discussion thereafter. So let me start with the problem that we're trying to solve with MzansiXchange. Many of you will know that within our government data landscape, it is very much characterized by fragmentation, siloed systems, and limited interoperability between departments, between entities, and other agencies. And what this has done is that it has constrained our ability to make evidence-based decisions, deliver on integrated services, and allocate resources effectively so that we can build public trust in the systems that we use. And that really is what MzansiXchange is about. It's about addressing those gaps by creating an environment where data can be shared in a secure, structured, and coordinated manner across government, and I'll explain shortly how that works. And what you have to imagine is a situation where different government departments sit individually on a host of different data sets. And what they typically do is that they use their data to inform the decisions that they make. And what MzansiXchange is about allowing different government departments and agencies to leverage the data of others more effectively so that we can make more informed decisions. So today we launch the MzansiXchange pilot, which takes an important step in this direction, where we can work together more effectively and efficiently through trusted, secure, and seamless data sharing. So if we go back a few years, more than 10 years now, we've piloted initiatives similar to MzansiXchange many years ago and very successfully. One good example of that MzansiXchange builds on is the National Treasury's secure data facility, as well as the spatial economic activity data that we host in this facility. Both of these initiatives provide critical data for research, policymaking, and planning, and it demonstrates what's possible when we use secure, de-identified administrative data in shaping our policymaking and our development objectives. So if you look at the National Treasury Secure Data Facility, that facility has, over the last decade or so, handled anonymized tax records in support of rigorous policy analysis and public sector decision-making. If you go to the lab today, what you will find is a data facility where researchers access this anonymized tax data, and they use it to conduct a range of different innovative economic research on a host of different topics, from assessing firm-level productivity in South Africa to evaluating government programs such as the employment tax incentive. And South Africa is one of only a handful of countries globally that makes this kind of micro-level administrative data available for research and evaluation. In addition, the National Treasury Secure Data Facility also houses spatialized tax data. So that's when you put that anonymized tax data into a spatial context that enables provinces and municipalities to access detailed economic insights for their local planning and decision-making purposes, which allows us to improve our understanding of the geographic distribution and characteristics of the economic activities that we monitor. The reason I'm mentioning these two initiatives is because it shows us what's possible when we share data responsibly with one another in a secure environment in order to inform better outcomes for society. And we've learned many valuable lessons along the way about what it takes to build secure systems, collaborate across government. Of course, that particular lab required a lot of collaboration, in particular with the South African Revenue Services, which is a key partner of the MzansiXchange as well. Moving on now from the last 10 years to why we are here today. In March this year, Cabinet approved South Africa's roadmap for the digital transformation of government, which was officially launched in May 2025 under the leadership of an IMC and an interministerial committee and the Interdepartmental Working Group on Digital Transformation, which I co-chair along with the DGs in the presidency and the DGs of Digital Communications, the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. This roadmap forms part of Operation Vulindlela Phase 2, which is a joint Treasury and Presidency initiatives, and it helps give us strategic direction for government to modernize its services, break down data silos, and build the digital public infrastructure we need. And there are 4 elements of the roadmap. We'll focus on one today, which is the data exchange, but there are 3 other elements of the roadmap which we will come back to you once we've advanced further in those. And that's the digital identity, digital payments, and digital services. So you have the data exchange that connects the other elements of the roadmap. So if you think about these as the 4 parts of the roadmap, data exchange, which underpins and connects digital payments, digital identity, where DG Tommy and his team is playing a very important role, as well as digital services. And all of this is under the banner of the broader MyMzansi initiative, which provides a single and will provide a single digital entry point for everyone to access government services. So what's the role of MzansiXchange in that context? MzansiXchange, as I said, is about connecting all these different parts of that digital roadmap. And what it does is that it helps us to streamline administrative processes. It enables government institutions to share data, and I'll come back to that later. It helps us to achieve greater efficiency and cost savings by eliminating redundant systems and enabling faster fraud detection. And it empowers policymakers by making timely data available to inform planning and decision making. In 2024, when we started the due diligence and the design phase of the MzansiXchange, the team focused on 4 elements: finding the best technical architecture, and I'll explain a bit more about that later, prototyping secure data access systems, accessing the legal and governance landscapes, and engaging stakeholders across government. And the design phase has informed the pilot that we are launching today. So just to be clear, MzansiXchange is a way of sharing data. It's not a central data depository. So the idea is not to have one place where different government departments come and deposit or store their data. The idea is to create an exchange or a bridge between different departments and agencies in order to share the data that they already have. And what that approach allows us to do is we can balance the data sovereignty that sits with different departments and the data sets that they have, the tax data that sits with the Revenue Service, the National Population Register that sits with the Department of Home Affairs, the procurement data that sits with the National Treasury, and so on and so forth, the social grant beneficiary data that sits with SASSA. It allows us to link those different data sets and access insights across them through a data exchange. The prototype that the team has built was done with X-Road as the foundational technology for the MzansiXchange. And when I explained to my 9-year-old what X-Road was, he was very impressed. He's learning to code in Python at the moment, and he was shocked that his dad knows about X-Road and data exchange software that exists. So at the very least, what this initiative has done has helped me to restore my children's faith in their father. So you've got X-Road as the foundational technology for the exchange, which supports flexible systems and enhancing resilience, ensuring standards, harmonization, and digital inclusion across the different data sets. And on top of that, MzansiXchange will have the right governance frameworks, which is very important in this kind of environment when you're working with secure government data sets, standardized data protocols in order to allow the exchange of data to take place, and the exchange will also set very clear expectations for data standards, data quality, metadata, and interoperability. It will provide standardized legal instruments, such as MOUs or SLAs, to guide secure and compliant data sharing. So as I come towards the end, let me just touch on what each of the 4 components of MzansiXchange allows us to do. These are the 4 pillars of the exchange. The first pillar, and these are different pillars for data sharing. The first pillar is data sharing for regulation, compliance, and verification. So authorized public entities can have real-time access to different data for verification and compliance purposes. For instance, when citizens enroll into government programs, and those government programs are subject to selection criteria, we can quickly draw on other data sets to ensure that those beneficiaries meet those criteria. So that's data sharing for verification and compliance. The second pillar, which is data sharing for evidence-based policy and research, allows us to share data that's been anonymized between different government agencies for research in a secure data facility, and it builds very much on the data lab that's already in place. So for example, once we've anonymized administrative data such as education outcomes, tax records, and social protection information, and share that within a secure data facility, we can start doing much more powerful research about the impacts of government programs, for example, as well as tracking more effectively what happens to firms, what happens to households, what happens to individuals, for example, in the labor market. The third pillar is data sharing for operational analytics. What this allows us to do is it facilitates bulk data transfers between different public sector institutions. So for example, we collect a lot of procurement data in government. We've recently obtained a lot of procurement data from Eskom, as an example, into the secure data facility, and we can then use that data to fulfill our functions more effectively. And then finally, the fourth pillar is open access data sharing. And that's really about allowing users to explore data catalogs, dashboards, data stories, and so on. And a very good example of this is the spatialized tax data that's already housed in the secure data facility that can be used to gain the insights that we spoke about earlier. We're launching a 1-year pilot today that will test the MzansiXchange in real-world conditions. And Ayanda, who's the Chief Data Analytics Officer at the National Treasury, will share more details in her presentation. We are fortunate that we're able to learn from other countries that have done this before. We are not the first ones to walk this road. And countries such as Estonia, which is a leader in digital government, India, the Dominican Republic, and Kazakhstan, as well as Benin, have been very generous in sharing their knowledge. We can also look to the international experience for the potential benefits. In the case of Brazil, for example, their authorities estimate that they've saved more than 4 billion in unlocking these kinds of efficiencies through their data exchange. So as I conclude, let me end with a few acknowledgements. It's been a joint journey amongst a range of different partners built on collaboration, commitment, and a shared purpose to get this across the line. There are many departments who have supported us, and I'm going to list all of them today because without their collaboration and support, we'd not be here today. Statistics South Africa, the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development, Agriculture as well, the Department of Home Affairs, DG Tommy is here as I indicated, Basic Education, Higher Education and Training, the Presidency and the Digital Services Unit in the Presidency. I saw the colleagues here as well. SARS, SASSA, the Social Security Agency, NSFAS, the CEO is here, the CSIR, and the South African Reserve Bank, who's worked very closely with us on the digital payments part of the roadmap as well. I also want to thank the MzansiXchange technical team, led by the Open Cities Lab, as well as our development partners that have provided funding for this initiative. SECO, the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs, UK FCDO, and the Gates Foundation. So we're very excited to launch this pilot here today. And while today's focus is on the MzansiXchange, it is ultimately, as you would have heard, a broader whole-of-government effort in order to build trust between departments, trust in the system, and most importantly, trust with the public. We look forward to working with all of you. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that with your help, we can work together to build a digitally empowered and data-smart public sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DG. That's the DG of the National Treasury. I guess it's true, DG, when they say leaders, whilst they face the same problems that we do, they don't let them get paralyzed, but they commit to finding solutions to them. And that's exactly what you are doing with the team of the National Treasury. And one of the commitments you've shown today, one should say, that is to bring your digital device on the platform. It was going to be very odd to speak about the MzansiXchange and papers are flying around. So we thank the DG of Home Affairs for the inspiration. Thank you, DG. It is a long route from where we came from to where we are today as pillars, from pillar to pillar. And now we're trying to introduce as much more usability of the data as we possibly can. And we can only do so with a team that comes together and put these kind of platforms for us. And one of the people that is involved in a day-to-day business of the MzansiXchange pilot launch is someone who's going to come to the stage now. This team has been working hard. When the new office was organized or was announced by the DG, the data office or in the DG's office, it was not clear what they're going to do, but now it's vividly clear why Dr. Ayanda is there. And this is one of the outcome of why what they're doing there. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Ayanda Tlhatshwayo, who's the Acting Chief Director, Data Analytics and Policy at the National Treasury. Ayanda, over to you. All the best.
Okay. The slides are up. I'm a bit shorter, so I'll bring this down. It's great to welcome all of our distinguished guests here today, as well as colleagues. Thank you for taking time out. I know all of us are busy, but it's also good to see faces that we work with on a day-to-day basis. And I hope you're able to find yourself in this presentation, because we've all been collaborating over the past year. So today, I just want to take you into a bit more detail around the pilot. But I always think, when we talk about the exchange, and launching a pilot. A lot of people have been speaking against pilots, non-ending pilots, proof of concepts, but in reality it's very difficult to look at the ecosystem that our DG has just tried to outline in his remarks. We're trying to build a system that fundamentally changes the way that government operates. As such, it's very challenging to move from a concept to a full-scale production level system. So we have to go through a pilot phase and do proof of concepts, iron out all of the issues that arise, and ensure that when we do go live with this data, the system, it's a system that's well-oiled. We've ironed out all of the issues between the different parties, and we can deliver digital services more easily to the South African public. Oh, thank you, Fusi. So I want to take you guys on a journey, maybe a bit of an analogy. As we've been trying to pitch the data exchange to a lot of you colleagues who are also here today, we found that an analogy actually works the best for people to actually understand how data practically moves in the MzansiXchange. And we like to use a real-world example, which is a train station that has a network that connects different endpoints. So we'll start, let's say, with SASSA, which is one of our use cases. SASSA has internal systems that they currently use. They have their information systems where they do day-to-day work, but they may need additional data from other government departments that they don't house internally. So what we do is SASSA then would like to get data from another entity for, let's say, their eligibility testing. And in this case, they've identified the Department of Home Affairs, which is also part of our pilot. But to get this data with the exchange, both of these departments need to have what we're calling a security server, which is essentially a train station. In the same way that if you want to get from Johannesburg to Pretoria, you'd have to go to a train station if you're using the Gautrain. When you get to the train station, you're assured that you'll have a secure passage from the one point to your destination. In the same way, these security servers ensure that each entity has a secure, certified access point to the ecosystem. The security servers are a really essential component of this. Without them, data cannot move. The stations serve as an entry and exit point to the network, and it handles security checks, a ticketing system, which we call authentication, so that you know who's on this route, as well as routing and the path that the data will take. So as SASSA requests the data, we'd say that their data or their data request is almost like a passenger that jumps onto the train, and it knows where it wants to go. But obviously, as much as if you're in the Gautrain station, they don't necessarily need to know every detail about you. So the system does not store any of your information. It does not store any of the information that is in the data request, and that's securely sent to the security server at Home Affairs, which is also like a station where the data then approaches Home Affairs, and then Home Affairs is able to look at that data, verify that it's coming from SASSA, and if they don't have a problem with the data request, and it's all aligned to their mandates and the data that SASSA is eligible to be receiving from Home Affairs, they are then able to securely process that data and hand it over and send it back on the same railway track. Now, I think an important part of this is the actual railway track itself, because that is our network and our security server, as you'd say, which consists of a secure communication protocols that connects all the stations with built-in security and safety systems, and allows multiple routes to reduce redundancy and high traffic, to ensure that no matter how many people are on the railway, you're able to process all of the data requests that are going through the exchange. So when the data is then packaged and processed at Home Affairs, in this case, Home Affairs would be our data provider. If the checks and the request is valid, they then allow the data to pass through, they package it, and this is very similar to data being sent back as cargo on the train. So still, the train station, as well as the railway network, has no storage or knowledge of the data that's packaged in that request that's been sent back to SASSA. And when it gets to SASSA, SASSA is able to verify that actually this data indeed comes from Home Affairs, and it's the information that we need to conduct our eligibility testing. So they're then able to check if an applicant has a valid ID or any other checks that they need to run with the Department of Home Affairs data. Now, part of the MzansiXchange that you haven't seen here are the central components. You can see them up there on the corner on the slides. These are your central components, which is the same as your rail or National Rail Authority. Now, every good data exchange has an audit trail. The central components maintain the master timetable, which is a list of all organizations and services that you're able to get. It issues operating licenses, which are certificates that certify who the department is and who's the person who's requesting the data, as well as a train schedule, which is like a timestamp for each request and each data journey, so that we can audit how many data sets have been shared at what frequency with different departments. So ultimately, what the MzansiXchange creates is a trusted data transport network where organizations maintain their own secure entry points, data travels in standardized secure containers, and there's a central authority that maintains order without controlling, knowing the contents of each data package, or storing the data. Everyone is connected through the same system, resulting in efficient, secure, standardized data exchange across the nation's entire digital public infrastructure. Now, this is the vision and data journey that we're trying to start working towards as the MzansiXchange. And I thought it was just important to start there so that when we take you through the requirements of the pilot, you understand where we're coming from and where we would like to get to. So for the pilot, what we essentially need to build is a foundation for federated data exchange. And by federated, we just mean each entity retains ownership of its own data and responsibility for its own data, ensuring that it's up to date, ensuring that it updates the data catalogs that are associated with it, and informs everyone in the system whenever there are changes that happen to their data. Developing legal and governance frameworks for long-term adoption and testing in high-value, real-world use cases. And we also want to create a sustainable model to support the MzansiXchange in the long term. So currently, we're testing under pilot conditions, and while we do that, we're trying to think about what does it look like for this system to exist at scale so that all South Africans benefit from it. Now, the MzansiXchange employs a scalable, lean architecture, combining both hardware and software components based on international best practice. As DG had mentioned, it's powered by X-Road, but really the critical components that we need to undertake this current pilot is one, the architecture for the exchange with its central components, which means we're including our trust services, our timestamping and certification authority, as well as ensuring that government departments are able to prepare their environments so that they're able to be data providers as well as data consumers. Now, there are minimum standards that we're developing at the moment to allow departments to engage and exchange their data on the exchange. And, you know, for us, I think it's just to ensure that, you know, in each transaction of data that is undertaken, all government departments can get to that minimum standard where they're able to participate in that exchange. And people don't have to run across town with hard drives and emails that have really sensitive data, which tends to be the case at this point in time. And then I want to just mention that a department can be both a data provider and a data consumer, because you can request data, but you can also share your own data on the exchange. So I'm not going to go through this diagram now, but essentially the journey that I took you through is to show this particular journey where you look at your data provider's environment and what needs to be in place for them to participate in the exchange. You can see the central security server, which was our railway track, as well as the data catalogs. And you can also see our trust services, which allow direct data transfer between departments. But I think the example is a lot more fun than this diagram. I think we can agree. So moving to now the second key component, which DG already touched on as well, which is the legal and governance framework. For this component of the work, what we're trying to ensure is that everything is done legally, protecting constitutional rights and maintaining public trust. We require that each participant shares data and receives data that is aligned to their mandate. So essentially what the exchange does is it allows you to more easily access data that you are mandated to access. You won't necessarily be able to access data that is not within your remit to get, right? We're just making an easier way to facilitate sharing data with different government departments. And then in terms of the current legislation, we know that the current legislation currently has a lot of limitations. We're setting up a lot of protocols and governance structures to govern this intermediate step that we're in, while we're busy developing broader legislation to actually govern this new data sharing ecosystem that we want to put in place. This will cover digital identity payments as well as the data exchange, and is being coordinated through the DSU. What is also really important is ensuring that we protect citizens' rights and ensure safeguarding while balancing the public benefit of seamless data exchange. UNDP currently is actually supporting us with embedding safeguards into our design. And for us, the safeguards are a prerequisite for safe implementation of DPI in South Africa. Overall, our aim is to encode our legislation and governance and to embed them into the exchange so that we ensure that legal and technical interdependence is achieved. So if you're on the exchange, you don't have to then think about POPIA and other legislation, but you're already compliant by virtue of being a participant of the exchange. Okay, and then our pilot will be running from this month that we're in October up until September 2026. With what we've done to date, as we've been on this journey for almost a year and a half now, we have successfully deployed our prototype environment at CSIR using their high computing performance center. We have also, as I indicated before, a central part of this is ensuring that we have trust services. It's important for these to be provided by a third party. It would be very difficult for Treasury to set up an exchange, but also deploy those internally. So it's almost like marking your own homework, that you're doing the right things. So the SARB has been partnering with us on onboarding someone who's going to be a third-party provider that will be our certification and time-stamping authority. And then the MzansiXchange use cases have also kicked off. We've had a lot of collaborative sessions with our key use cases, and we're refining the key objectives for the different task teams that we've identified. I'll touch on those a little bit later. In terms of membership and data sharing agreements, the governance task team is at work on this, and we're trying to finalize those as soon as possible so that all participants and members of the pilot will be able to sign, and we can share data, especially when trying to do our proof of concepts over the next few months. In terms of M&E, we also have a framework that's under development to measure the impact and public benefit of the exchange. We have 3 tiers of coordination: the project level, the task teams, as well as the use case level. The task teams, I'll focus on those first, which are your data governance, your data exchange, the technical building of the exchange, organizational readiness and integration, as well as standards. I'll touch on organizational readiness and integration because we've mentioned legal and governance quite a bit already. This supports selected departments in preparing and onboarding themselves, aligning internal processes and ensuring operational readiness for each department. As we know in South Africa, there's quite a vast or varying degree of digital maturity or data maturity within each department. And so there's a need to actually sit down with each department, assess where they are, and put in place data dictionaries and catalogs and build APIs in the environment so that they're able to participate in the exchange. We're also setting standards, working together with DPSA on this, which defines and implements metadata, data quality, interoperability standards to ensure consistency and usability across the exchange. These task teams work together to form the backbone of our pilot phase, enabling structured coordination, technical delivery, and real-world testing of the MzansiXchange platform. Now, in terms of our use cases, I've just put these up so that you get a sense of the different departments that are participating, but essentially for the real-time data verification, our key use cases are SASSA and NEFSIS, which strongly rely on Department of Home Affairs data. This is to streamline citizen services, reduce administrative burdens through instant verification. We've also got the National Treasury Secure Data Facility. With this, we're also exploring bringing in additional data sets to host in the lab, like our social protection data, health data, to improve policy making. We also have the operational analytics. For this particular use case, we have the Office of the Accountant General as well as the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer in Treasury, who are working on improving and aligning and creating a single source of truth for data, for key data assets like your BAS systems. For the data exchange open access products, we're collaborating together with CDSA and StatsSA to ensure that less sensitive or non-sensitive data sets can be made available through open access portals that are on the exchange. The MzansiXchange will take a flexible, agile approach to prioritizing additional use cases during the pilot. Future use cases could include the Department of Basic Education, the Department of Health, the CIPC, provincial as well as local government. I think ensuring that our exchange can connect across the three spheres of government is quite essential. In terms of our pilot roadmap, we have a one-year pilot, and we have deliverables in each of those quarters that span technical development, governance, standards establishment, as well as our use case implementation. Across the different quarters, we just have some deliverables. This will also be available on our website. We're trying to establish in the short term our governance structures. A legal framework is in development. We're developing a sandbox environment that's ready for third-party integration, which is the trust services that I mentioned. Developing a data dictionary, metadata, and data quality standards and definitions, as well as a use case playbook that we'll publish on the website. In the second quarter of our pilot, which is early next year, we hope to have a proof of concept completed between the Department of Home Affairs and SASSA, so that we're actually in testing stage for that. And then we also have a space to actually do a mid-pilot evaluation and adjustments, so that if anything is not working or we need to reprioritize and certain things become more urgent, we then have flexibility to change things around. And then we also are going to have some initial user training and capacity building materials that we also put in place. I think for us, it's just important to ensure that at the end of this pilot journey, for those departments that are technologically advanced, if we can lay out clear standards and approaches to how people can plug into the exchange, a lot of departments will be able to execute and get their environments ready on their own, building up to what we actually want in the long term as you implement the MzansiXchange. But in the third quarter, we also want to have some additional use case progress to report, drafting data exchange legislation that's ready to consolidate broader digital transformation efforts, as well as consultations, to transition from planning, planning for our transition from pilot to production. And then hopefully by the end, this time next year in September 2026, we'll actually have a very clear understanding of the use cases that we'll be implementing from then, a clear plan to how we scale to production, and other use cases that we'll be able to bring in going forward. So beyond the pilot, we're now, thinking that, from moving to, from a pilot to production phase, we're slowly going to transition to a fully distributed system where departments can share their data directly with minimal oversight. This evolution will incorporate lessons learned from the pilot, whilst expanding to include additional participants, sharing production data that benefits citizens as well as the public. We're also going to ensure that we have sustainable governance framework. This includes ensuring that we have optimal legislation or a legislative environment and developing clear accountability mechanisms to support the long-term vision of the MzansiXchange. And then lastly, we also want to ensure that we have distributed technical capacity. Now, this will ensure that there's formalized training programs that are developed, internal capacity for platform management, and creating support networks that enable departments to operate independently while maintaining interoperability standards. The Digital Services Unit is also really important for this adjustment and building, capacity across the state for government departments to be able to undertake this work. In terms of the broader ecosystem, the MzansiXchange will be the cornerstone of our digital public infrastructure, enabling seamless integration with provincial and municipal systems, facilitating data exchange partnerships to advance national development goals. Now, I think I just have to end with, ensuring that even though we've stated all of our partners to date, it's not the end of the road. We will be expanding membership beyond the pilot phase as we scale the system. And so it'll be great to engage with other partners who are interested in participating in the exchange. And if you'd like to participate, you can always reach out to us. I'll share our details on the screen just now so that you're able to get in touch. But I do have to give a special thank you, particularly to the MzansiXchange support team, which has been led by the Open Cities Lab, as well as our own Treasury's City Support Program. Without their support, the MzansiXchange and the event today wouldn't have been possible. And so I've just put up our email address for any queries, as well as a link to our website. You can scan the QR code. If you'd like to read and learn more on the exchange, we'll be updating the website periodically so that you can get some updates on the pilot and how things are going. And you're also welcome to reach out to ask any questions. Thank you all for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ayanda. Such a beautiful presentation there. It shows that we are moving on the right direction. What I like about Ayanda's presentation, I'm not sure about you, but is that there are clear commitments and timelines that will hold her into account. What was not clear is, are we coming back here next year in the second quarter? It depends on budget. Sponsors are listening. Thank you so much, Ayanda, for the beautiful presentation that you just shared with us. We hope you enjoyed it, as well as the audience that is streaming live from the social media platforms, particularly I think it's YouTube. They've also gained an insight or two. By the way, we won't be engaging with the audience live, but if they wish to do so, to engage with us or to engage Ayanda and team, they can be kind and shoot straight an email to MzansiXchange@treasury.gov.za. The youngsters will call it MzansiTimesChange@treasury.gov.za. They can send those emails, and of course, they'll be able to respond to you. Ayanda has spoken a lot about what they have done, what the idea is, and what the plan is over the next year or two. But what is important is for us to build the blocks and really test what Dr. Ayanda is saying really makes sense to us. And we've put together a carefully curated and selected panel of stakeholders here, starting from the National Planning Commission. SASSA is in the house. We'll also have the DPSA. Treasury is also represented, as well as the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. So we are moving to the panel that will help us to build these blocks, and it will be led by Tanya Cohen. Let me let you know just a bit about Tanya, and I'll do so with the rest of the panelists today before I invite them on stage. Tanya Cohen is a commissioner of the National Planning Commission and a board member of the Industrial Development Corporation, working at the intersection of business and government. Cohen specializes in solutions for social or socio-economic inclusion. She's a former CEO of a business unit in South Africa and a CCMA chairperson. She is an attorney who holds a BA, LLB, and LLM degrees, all from the University of Witwatersrand, that is the University of Wits. Cohen provides leadership to the Digital Mzansi team on stakeholder engagement. Joining Cohen will be Fanny Sitoha, who is the General Manager of Grants Operations at the South African Social Security Agencies, in short, SASSA, that is based in Pretoria. In this role, he leads the end-to-end management of the social grant application processes from initial submissions through the final approvals, including the coordination of disability assessments. Some of his responsibilities extend beyond new applications to include ongoing maintenance of beneficiaries' records and implementation of life certification protocols for all approved grant recipients. So we are indeed talking to the right person that will tell us if this MzansiXchange makes sense to the beneficiaries and it makes sense to SASSA. Also in the panel is Mandla Ngobo, is currently the Government Chief Information Officer or the Deputy Director General level in the South African Public Service. And he is working for the Department of Public Service and Administration. His role entails overseeing the development of and monitoring the implementation of a number of norms and standards on information management, e-government, which is digital government, reforms, transformation and innovation in the public service as provided by the Public Service Act of 1994. So Mandla Omapolova is also a much more relevant person to speak to and really test if this is the block we can build on this from the public service point of view. In the panel, we also are privileged to have Shabir Khan, who's the Accountant General of the National Treasury. Mr. Khan has more than 20 years or 2 decades of experience in the public service. He joined the National Treasury in 2023 in the capacity of Accountant General of South Africa, of the National Treasury. Mr. Khan is a chartered accountant and a member of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. So we are privileged to also have a perspective, from a budget perspective, on how this digital world or the MzansiXchange is relevant to us. Finally, but not least, ladies and gentlemen, we are so privileged to have Mr. Wasim Karim, who is the Acting Chief Executive Officer of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Just briefly about Mr. Wasim. Wasim is, as I said, the Acting Chief Executive Officer of National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS. He is the former CFO and the CEO of the National Youth Development Agency, where he led the NYDA to 9 consecutive clean audit outcomes and grew the organization from, listen to this, 400 million to 1.5 billion budget. I wonder how he did this. He'll tell us. We'll have an opportunity to ask him that. But he is also the chartered accountant by profession and holds 2 master's degrees. Wasim is a member of a board of small enterprise finance development agency at UNISA Enterprise. He has a number of awards, and among them includes the SAICA 35 under 35 that he received in 2016. Those are our panelists, and I hope you'll be ready to shoot questions to them and interact with them. As I said, if you're not in this room, MzansiXchange at treasury.gov.za is your gateway to interact with our panelists today. But without wasting any time, please help me welcome our audience, led by Tanya Cohen. Our panelists, I meant. Help me welcome our panelists. I was trying to check if they're listening and called for audience. All right. Over to you, Tanya. Thank you. All the best. Thank you. Cheers, man.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much to our panelists for being here. And we hope to take you through some of the really practical examples within the next hour. We're going to spend about 40 minutes with the panelists, and then there is going to be time for Q&A and questions from the audience. So, digital government is the wave of the future, and we've seen around the world that governments are adopting digital public infrastructure to build greater efficiencies for government and obviously improved service delivery and access for citizens. Earlier this year, MyMzansi roadmap was launched, and we've heard that this is an integral part. It's one of the 4 components of that roadmap. This is your data exchange piece, which alongside digital services, digital identity, and digital payments makes up the roadmap. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at the practical application of that roadmap. We've heard about the theory behind it, but we know that theory is, and the technology is about 20% of it. It's much more around actually how it's implemented and the process by which we get it going. So the pilot marks a fundamental shift, and I think we mustn't lose that moment. It's a fundamental shift from design into implementation. And we've heard already about the fact that a lot of this is in implementation in various departments and different entities, but the pilot is about bringing it together and starting to connect how it works in an integrated way across government. And I think so often we hear the critique about planning, planning, planning. I come from the National Planning Commission, so we hear it a lot. And that when are we going to implement? I think we really need to take a moment to reflect on the fact that today is about the transition into implementation, and that's what's really significant. So with us, we've got a very distinguished panel of people who are distinguished implementers. They're not distinguished planners. And I think I want to shed a little bit of light on them as individuals. So Shabir comes from a very small town called Glencoe. Does anyone know Glencoe? You do? Okay. He said no one knows Glencoe. It's down the road from where I grew up, Ladysmith, which is your deep rural areas. And so that's where he's coming from. He's thinking about where he grew up, but I think also where he currently lives and works in National Treasury. Mandla, aside from his day job, is a keen farmer. So what he does morning and night is he's looking after the goats and the chickens and making sure that they're properly fed. Wasim says that he optimizes his Netflix account in his free time. And Fani is a keen gardener. So why do I say these things about people? Because we are dealing with real people. We're not dealing with technology. And the intention of this MzansiXchange is really around how do you make sure that real people that are working in government and government agencies have a much easier time doing their job, that it's more efficient, that there's more accountability, that service delivery is improved, and that real people are being serviced in a much more profound way as citizens. So just to kick us off, I wanted to just ask how many people are we dealing with out there? And Fani, how many grant recipients are there?
So we have 2 groups. For normal social grants, we're servicing 19 million. For the SRD 350, we're paying an average of around 7.5, 7.7 million on a monthly basis, but the applications that we're processing are just around 15 million on a monthly basis for SRD 350 only. So it's a combination of the normal social grants and the 350s, so you're looking at around 27 million monthly payouts that we're doing.
So 27 million people monthly. Okay. Wasim, how many people are under NSFAS?
Yeah, so NSFAS gets about 1.5 million student applications or prospective student applications, and we support about 900,000 students per academic year.
1,900 people. 1,500 come through your ranks?
1.5 million applications.
And 900,000 active students are receiving funds. Mandla? What is the scope of the public service? Like, what is the size there that you're dealing with?
Thanks. I mean, for public service, we're looking at between 1.2, 1.3 million public servants. That's the number that we have.
And that's the same, Shabir, that you're dealing with as well?
So, as the Office of the Accountant General, we manage the payroll system for the entire national and provincial government. And as Manda said, we process between 1.2 and 1.3 million salaries every single month through that centralized system.
Yeah. So those numbers are just absolutely like massive, and I think that's the extent of, and it just gives you a very quick glimpse into what data sets are held in the various agencies and in government, but are they joined up, and that's what we're going to check today. So starting with you, Fani, as Grant Operations Manager in SASSA, can you tell us, in terms of the verification process for a grant applicant, what does the current look like? What does that process mean for the individual? And just walk us through that.
Yeah, so I think for us, maybe let me start by saying COVID-19 era was a turning point in how we do business. And I like what the DG has indicated earlier on, that generally we look at our own houses and we die alone in corners. But COVID-19, government said, SASSA, you are actually a super spreader suspect. So we don't want any people going to your offices. Introduce this service, and no one needs to go to offices, and it needs to be paperless. To us, that was the trigger for why we are here, because it was during that time that, as a start, it was for the first time that we did it as well, that we had to go and knock at the doors of every bank, and 2-3 weeks down the line, we were signing contracts with almost every big bank that exists. Otherwise, every digital bank that services the type of clientele that would come for our benefits. But it was even worse that we went out into a spree of trying to coerce other government departments that did not have any agreements with us to get into written agreements with us for purposes of being able to share data for verification processes, as the DG was outlining earlier on. So today, I think we are amongst the few public entities that have a large body of relationships with a number of entities, whether in government or outside of government, that we verifying data. As I'm seated here, and I like it that the DG of Home Affairs is here, we had done some amendments to our agreement with Home Affairs, and they said, hey, okay, SASSA, stop a little bit. This and that I can't share with you, but my other agents, which is BMA, will be the one that goes into bed with you for this verification around people that are going in and out of the country. So we sharing data today with a large body, but the way that we are sharing data, we have problems with it. And I think I'll explain that later. Thank you.
No, I think explain now, because we want to know what the problems are.
So the way we're sharing data today is not how we want it at SASSA. So we go into an entity similar to a bank, and we say, take 15 million records here. Test each one of these records and confirm if ever you do have an account. If you do, confirm if ever you are seeing any money flowing into this account. If there is, respond back to us and tell us what you are seeing. But we do the same with every bank. So meaning, each bank, we're dumping data, they are dumping data back. That's painful. Don't you believe it? So back in 2020, the banks said to us, no, SASSA, we can't do it that way. Our infrastructure may not be able to handle it. It's a lot of data, it's millions. But of course, we kept on pursuing, it has increased. But the problem is, it is still painful to us. We do the same with many other entities except SARS. SARS says, no, you're not going to pass anything to me, but you'll do things my way. But in a nutshell, we're saying the way that we're sharing data today as SASSA, we don't like it. Secondly, the arrival of Popia changed things. So we having other additional challenges that have surfaced. Now you're knocking at this entity and you say, look, I want to share data with you, I want to verify that, and they say, no, we are scared. We are scared. I don't want to go to prison. And that's Popia. But it is because they are thinking I'm now going to take my data, put it to you, you're going to push data to me, something may go wrong, and I'll go to prison. And it doesn't have to be like that. The other element is that that alone, a number of entities, specifically in government, they don't have infrastructure. So we, with banks, we're using APIs, but not with all other government entities. There's others that they just don't have adequate data storage capacity.
What's the impact of those problems on the applicant? So a new grant applicant who comes in, what does it mean currently, and what will this mean when it's properly
the impact of that to the applicants is that you then have some of the applicants that are from deep rural areas having to go from one entity to the other. Looking for what? Looking for written document that confirms that they don't have that or they have that. Whereas, technically, if I was able to share data with this entity, there was no need for that entity to go up and down. An example is NSFAS. In the past, every year, January, SASSA offices would be flooded with people wanting to come and check whether to come and request verification, written verification that they are a social grant recipient. Up until we were pushed to go to bed with NSFAS, and thanks for agreeing. So what has happened is that there is now no need for the students or parents to go to SASSA offices every year in January and flood our offices, because we have Department of Education, we have an interface with them, we have NSFAS. By the time matric results are out, we know we have data ready that we've pushed to NSFAS before the student even thinks of applying for NSFAS. NSFAS already knows that I have X number of them that have passed matric and they are social grants recipients.
So it's real-time data exchange. So by the September 2026, we're going to hopefully see real-time data exchange in terms of the verification of grant recipients.
By September 2026, and we hope MzansiXchange will help give birth to this as a matter of agent. We want you to keep your data, we want to keep our data, but still be able to do that which we used to do in 2025. Right. But we also want more entities to come on board. Yeah. We also want to be able to, I think between us and Home Affairs, that relationship between us and Home Affairs is alive.
So right? We've got our DG here, we're going to hold him to account.
It's not adequate because of the old ways of doing business. Right. What we want is, we want Home Affairs to transition together with us. And we hope MzansiXchange is going to enable it.
Yeah. So, you gave a really good example about NSFAS, and I know, Wasim, that you are not yet in the implementation phase and as far advanced as others, but you're getting there. So I want you to just paint a picture in terms of, tell us what is the current student experience in terms of applying for funding, and what MzansiXchange is going to deliver.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. Perhaps even a step before that. So I think it's quite a privilege to share the stage with the National Treasury. You know, NSFAS and National Treasury don't have the best relationship with it.
Even with us.
Generally, when I go to a meeting with the DG, you know, you can cut the tension with a knife here.
Fire.
You see, MyMzansi is the first step towards rebuilding the relationship here. Yeah. But I think, you know, you also spoke about something important is to say beyond the data and the numbers, there are real people behind what happens, right? And you know, higher education is one of the things that have a transformative impact in South Africa. And I'll give you a couple of statistics, right? So 70% of NSFAS beneficiaries are from households that are social grant recipients, right? And I think that's amazing because it tells you that there's a clear policy interface between basic education policy, where we support young people at basic education with academic support, nutrition support, households that are supported through social grants, and those students are enabled to go to higher education, you know, get a qualification, and achieve real social mobility in society. And that means a lot for us getting things right here. The second statistic that always appears to me is that today 60% of government chief directors, DDGs, and DGs were funded by NSFAS or TAFSA. Yeah. And it's quite amazing. Well, also, if they didn't pay their loan, they should pay it back, because MyMzansiXchange will help us identify through Purcell who hasn't paid their NSFAS loan. Yeah. So I think the transformative impact of the fund is reflected in that here, right? I think NSFAS has made some advancement in terms of the assessment of applications. So, you know, we've got an online system. We don't sit surrounded by reams and reams of paper. But I think the issues in the fund have led to what we call incorrect funding decisions at times, yeah, right? And I think quality of data becomes important, because the dependencies do exist, is to say, if SASSA gets things wrong on their side, then NSFAS will make incorrect funding decisions, yeah? So we talk about the triangulation of data between Social Security, between the Revenue Service, and between Home Affairs, which becomes quite important in us making correct funding decisions. Yeah? And if we make the right funding decisions, then the downstream impact is much more positive. Because unfortunately, the impact of making incorrect funding decisions is the SIU, you know, releases reports that says NSFAS has incorrectly funded 12,000 students, you know, and that loss to the state then needs to be recovered, which creates a number of downstream impacts here. Yeah. So I think from our perspective, it's really just improving the student experience in terms of how quickly they can receive answers, how they can get communication, which of course we know we work in a sector that's highly volatile in nature. And what we want is a much improved student journey, so that when students are ready to enter university or TVET college, they do so having less anxiety about the financial pressures that they might face in transitioning from basic education to higher education, which ultimately takes us where we want to go. Is, you know, we care about graduation and employment. Yeah. That's the ultimate outcome of what we want to achieve as a fund. But the data that underpins that and the process becomes really important in us achieving our ultimate objectives and outcomes.
Okay, so you explained it really, really well, but you didn't tell us about the student journey. Can you just walk us through that very quickly?
Yeah. So I mean, I think once the student logs an application, and you know, there's a there's a reality. People think it's just young people. You know, if you're 60 years old and you want to apply for NSFAS, you can. There's no age limitation. I've got a pensioner who's up my case about NSFAS. Yeah. So anybody can apply as long as you meet the criteria, right? And once you've made an application, you know,
where do you apply? In paper, online?
Online. It's completely online system. Yeah, right. Once you've made the application and put your relevant supporting documents, we talk about two decisions as NSFAS. So we talk about financial eligibility, and it's quite a simple decision, is that students who come from households who earn less than 350,000 are eligible to apply for the fund. So the financial eligibility decision sits with NSFAS, which includes the triangulation of data between Home Affairs, SARS, and South African Social Security.
Is that currently happening, that triangulation?
It is. Our relationship with SARS broke down previously, but I think through this process, we've really been able to rebuild that relationship. So we're getting towards the right direction. And of course, I think there are some issues in the Home Affairs space which we're working through as well. So the financial eligibility decision, I think the one part that's always been deeply problematic for us is the fact that, you know, rather than automated funding decisions, this was a person staring at a screen making a decision, you know, which is also not the best case. So what we're trying through this project is to automate the funding decision. So that's the financial eligibility component. And then, of course, there's an academic eligibility component. So continuing students need to meet academic progression criteria. New students, obviously, you know, entering university need to meet minimum scores and things like that there. And then we've got to interface with all 76 public institutions. And I think probably that's what we're thinking about, you know, automation and digitization probably in the next phase of this kind of project.
So data exchange will enable that to be much quicker and obviously much more accountable, and to make sure that the errors don't fall through.
Yeah, as well as more effective and efficient, right?
Yeah.
And keeping students updated so they know because the other reality is that you've got a lot of talented students who may not meet the NSFAS criteria, who may access other bursary funds, you know, or can apply for loan funding. So it's important that effectiveness and efficiency leads to other positive downstream impacts.
Okay. So the aim there, again, is real-time data exchange for greater efficiencies, which is brilliant. Shabir, I want to move to you in terms of your area under the Accountant General's office, and explain to us the benefits of data exchange in your environment.
Thank you, Tanya. So, I mean, listening to the colleagues on the platform, the core problem in the public sector is not the lack of data, but really that data is locked up in silos in departments. And we've generally in the past used MOUs to actually transfer data. And I think Fani spoke about that. And that has generally been the problem that we've seen. For decades, government work with this high degree of fragmentation. And this is really the challenge that we see. As the Office of the Accountant General, we've got quite a specific mandate around enhancing good financial management across the public service. And we generally do this through a number of tools such as legal frameworks, accounting systems, etc., etc. And we're hoping through this MzansiXchange, we can really improve that. So the analogy that I'd like to put forward, and it's quite a good one, because I did ask the team, give me a very simplified example on what we're trying to solve here. And in the past, when the Office of the Accountant General wanted to verify information of another department, they would formally send the request, and that department will then acknowledge, and they will go and then locate the information and then send it through. But it was really trying to read a book in a locked library. And that's really the key issue, because as National Treasury, you as the regulator of good financial governance across the public service, you should be having a lot more, you should be having access to a lot more of this information in a much more efficient way. And this for us is really the key issue we're trying to solve. So in terms of where we are currently, and we do receive a number of requests as the National Treasury for information. So we currently house all financial data, payments data, and to a certain extent a lot of the procurement data through our legacy systems, which is BAS, Purcell, and Logos. And this sharing of data is through a file sharing model. So you request the information, and I don't see Marius here today, but Marius Klue, who is the Chief Director for Financial Systems, receives this request, he logs it, he then assigns it to a person, and then the person will go and extract that information. But this in itself poses a number of challenges. Number one, it's slow, okay? It relies on a lot of manual processes, not efficient.
And Marius isn't here today. Or he's on leave, or he's... or the system's down.
Marius is inundated with those requests, hence he's not here today. But there's also an issue of security. When you share data in this fashion, there's always the risk of data being copied, especially sensitive data. And that's a key risk that we need to solve for. But I think the most fundamental issue, and I think Ayanda framed it quite well, is that in this model, we provide a snapshot of information at a point in time. By the time Marius responds and gives that information, a good week or two has passed. But in the same time, life has moved on. So you do not provide a real live insight into what is happening. So it creates a nightmare for reconciling, auditing, assurance, as we are constantly being provided with outdated information. So what MyMzansi does, it really represents a fundamental paradigm shift. It moves us from sending files to providing secure and controlled access to live data. And that's fundamentally where we want to move. But it also allows us to reimagine a lot of what we could do. Listening to Fani from a social security perspective, I mean, the world is endless. We can really reimagine what we want to do in this space. But what MyMzansi does, it gives us a secure digital key card. It doesn't give us access to the entire library, but it allows us to ask very specific questions through this data exchange. For example, we could ask through this exchange if a supplier's tax data is up to date. And we could then be provided with a very specific yes or no response, which then allows us to move forward. So it's a lot more efficient way of doing business.
Can you give us a little bit of insight into the work that you've been doing on the ghost workers? Because I think that was something that was really of interest, I think, to public at large, but I think it started to sort of show a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of what's possible.
So the Ghost Workers project, both the Minister of Finance and the Director General of Treasury has spoken about this. And it is a fundamental concern and risk in terms of the fiscal framework. Currently, the process that we follow for ghost workers, you actually need to embark on a project of verifying ghost workers. And this is a very manual, outdated process where you actually need to request every single employer in the state to come and physically verify themselves. And we know that that is almost impossible. But central to our...
So every one of those 1.3 million employees needs to come and physically present themselves to prove that they're real people.
Yep.
Okay.
So the 1.3 million number is just national and provincial government. That excludes local government, which is probably another few 100,000. And then it also excludes, at this stage, our state-owned companies and public entities. So we're looking at quite a high number if we want to do this. We've, as the Office of the Accountant General, has been on this transformational journey on our financial system for quite some time. And we've recently introduced something called a DigiGov system. And this DigiGov system is really a key pillar to our reforms on the financial systems. And really what we want to do with DigiGov is really allow us to use all the financial systems to interact with MzansiXchange to really get information that allows us to do so. So just to give you a sense of what this means. So within this DigiGov platform, what we want to do is we want to develop a concept of a secure digital wallet. And this isn't a physical wallet, but this digital wallet will allow the 1.3 million public servants to have a digital container that contains their employment status, their department, their role, but including system permissions in terms of which system they can access. And this digital information is encrypted and it's containing and controlled by an authoritative source. When an official then attempts to log into a system, through MzansiXchange, you can immediately then verify, number one, is this a valid employee? When you verify that information with Home Affairs, but also to verify whether this particular official has the authority to actually access the financial systems. Once this exchange happens and verification happens, DigiGov will then allow this employee to then to access the systems. If this person doesn't have the access, they will be blocked immediately at the source. So very simply, I mean, MzansiXchange facilitates and provides National Treasury through the Office of the Accountant General to get real-time authoritative responses on whether someone is valid or not. But what this really does, it really moves us from retrospective or retrospective verification to more of an automated real-time verification. And that's really where we want to see this moving in. So through this digital ID, we'll be able to get a lot more information on what employees does. And this we do see as an automated, almost self-defense when we want to try to eliminate ghost workers in the system.
Okay, but I still want you to come back to the issue of, and we'll do it in the next round, in terms of exactly how you're doing that with the ghost workers, because that's, I think, what's interesting. Mandla, you set the rules of the game in terms of Department of Public Service and Administration. So that train station that you were referring to, Ayanda, and like how people go through the station and get onto the train and how packages are sent backwards and forwards, is that you the rule master. You setting the standards in terms of, you know, what type of people can go on this train, what type of data and packages can go, like what are the conditions under which they travel, and how do you get the system ready to make sure that this is going to work smoothly? Tell us a little bit about where you're at in the process.
Thanks. I think as part of the exchange process, one of the most difficult things to deal with is the people. Because if you think about it, governance is meant to kind of change people's behavior. And that's exactly where we kind of play. That is number one. But number two, we provide high-level enough guardrails so that, for instance, initiatives like the MzansiXchange is able to then have much more low-level governance rules, so to speak. So as part of the journey, April this year, a directive was issued by Overseer to the Minister. It's a directive around data governance in the public service, right? Basically, its attempt, obviously, to try and kind of introduce some shifts in the public service from a data management perspective. And the bigger context really is how does data, for instance, impact the changing nature of jobs? So going forward, what is expected, for instance, of a finance, of an HR person, and so on and so on. As a result, some of the changes, when you look at that framework or the directive, it's introducing change at various levels. I mean, think of it from a people, process, technology perspective. But if kind of you want to zoom deep and you kind of say some of the people issues, we look at issues around leadership, for instance. On the issues of leadership and accountability, within departments, the framework seeks to ensure that ExCo members in the departments, first of all of them, they kind of come up or establish data management programs. So management of data, so they're able to feed the MyMzansi. It should not be incidental. I mean, we know from an IT perspective, it's gig or garbage in, garbage out. So it's not going to happen automatically that there's quality data that goes to the exchange. Yes, of course, there are new technologies that have been adopted that we appreciate, but we say as things stand now, so first of all, as ExCo, there must be a data management program, and it must align to the objectives of a department, right? That is number one. But number two, when you look at even the mindset shift perspective, the culture, a couple of things. Number one, don't treat or think of data as some kind of a byproduct of some kind of an application. Understand it to be a strategic asset for the organization. So treat it as such, right? That is what the framework is kind of looking at establishing as well. But importantly as well, one of the things that we're kind of very much good at, for lack of a better word, as public services. First, that we're always focusing on APPs, AOPs, targets, which basically are outputs. So the approach of the directive and the framework is to kind of start thinking about insights, because that's where you're planning, that's where your policies are going to come from. So to move away from outputs, start thinking about outcomes, for instance. So that's what are some of the things that are from a culture perspective. That's one of the things that the directive is trying to kind of measure.
How is that shift going to happen? Because you've got people that are used to sending, is it an email to Marius? They're used to sending an email to Marius, and you've got other people on the other side who are used to not releasing information or access to information until they get the message from Marius. And how's that change going to happen?
So, for instance, obviously, the directive it talks about practice. It focuses on practices that must be established, whether it's from integration, from equality, but practically, how does it happen? So it establishes roles, and so for instance, you cannot get rid of all public servants as you embrace data. For instance, every program manager, in terms of directive, is now a data owner. So if you're working in HR, and there happens to be for some kind of a parliamentary questions around what's the level of discipline, how many public servants, how many good qualifications, as the data owner who owns that program, directive is saying it's your responsibility. So what is that? It's an additional responsibility in terms of, or on top of you being responsible and heading HR. So consequently, issues around an application was sent, something went wrong, it's either it didn't come up, it came back with a different identity, there is somebody to account now going forward. That is the idea of the directive. But secondly, that person is not just going to be working alone as a person, right? There are people who are subject matter specialists, who are referred to as the data stewards, business data stewards, but also CIOs from an IT perspective. They've been given the role of being the custodian, and then you've got users. But across the department, it's important that certain capabilities or working together is established. So some kind of a committee, whether I call it data, it's called the Data Governance Committee, that is a representative of each area of business, where data requirements of a department, understanding the business outcomes, are going to be determined. So that when for instance, there's a capability like the MzansiXchange, you know exactly what you would require as the user and what you need to push into as a provider of data. So those are some of the kind of changes or the shifts that the directive and the framework are coming up with.
And that's a huge shift that's required, because I think people have to start seeing themselves as data owners, as you've indicated. And how do they keep the data secure? How do they make sure that the data is accurate? How do they make sure that their data can be shared in a responsible way with others? And we don't necessarily have dedicated resources within departments to do that. So it's going to require a shift in mindset in terms of how people deal with data on an ongoing basis. And I suppose the best way to shift that mindset is to start. And that's what this pilot really is about starting to do some of that in a very concerted way so that things start moving. I'm coming back to you quickly, Shabir, because I wanted you to just give the example of what data sets, if you're able to, on the ghost workers, or give us another example in terms of what type of data sets are you sort of combining real time so that we can get better efficiency and accountability in some of these processes.
Yeah. So I've indicated the work we're doing around DigiGov, and that's really the modernization program for the financial systems in government. And within this DigiGov program is really the digital identity. This digital identity will be a mandatory requirement for every public servant to have a digital identity. As a first step, for employees to be onboarded through MyMzansiXchange, that their employment status, their credentials, which department they work for, will be verified through the exchange. So that's the first and most important step. Secondly, as they interact with other systems, for example, a basic thing like requesting leave, they will then be verified through those additional systems. You won't be able to interact with other systems that every employee is required without having this required digital identity. So this is where we're trying to reimagine the future, where we can use the digital identity as a way of doing real-time verification every time an official interacts with any service within government, whether it's requesting leave, whether it's putting a request for S&T on the system, or whether any other broader public
And where are we at this stage with that now? Are new public servants being onboarded in that way, or are existing public servants being onboarded? Where are we at in the process?
So at the moment, we do have a legacy system called Purcell. And Purcell is really the payroll system for government. And where we would like to reimagine this is that we would then require, as part of the modernization journey, all employees will then be moved onto this new system, which is called DigiGov. And this is really where the modernization happens, but also allows us to then bring in these employees into this. The team is quite advanced. There's a lot of work behind the scenes. Marius is a key person, but I do have the team here as well. And they already do have a prototype on what this looks like. So as this is also a pilot today, I'm sure in a year's time we'll be able to demonstrate a lot more what we're doing in this space. And there's a lot of technical work being done behind the scenes.
No, but now, you with National Treasury, you can't say we're going to demonstrate what's going to be, give us numbers. How many, what percentage, like, where do we hope to be in a year with that pilot?
In a year's time, this DigiGov platform should be operational.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be operational in the sense that we should
that.
be able to onboard many of the government officials through this platform.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Once we have that platform up and running, in order for them to then access other government systems, they would have to use and operate through this digital key, which is quite an important function in terms of where we'd like to be.
Brilliant.
Tanya?
So, what we've, come in, Pani.
Yeah, I think I want to hop on to this discussion you are having with him, just to confirm that it is possible, and this I'm talking from a perspective that we have some back office discussions with them, because there's a few things that are happening in SASSA directly to your question. So today, and this, when he said he has an issue with Treasury, and I'm looking at the DG and I'm thinking, damn, here it comes again. So what Treasury did was this year, and I'm hoping that we're gonna see a lot of it happening with other entities, because Treasury, in them allocating budget to us, they then just cornered us and wrote conditions to this budget which they are giving. So one of the conditions they said, we want you to introduce biometrics. Today, as I'm seated here, I want to confirm to you that one, from 1st of April, biometrics are compulsory for every client who's applying for a social grant. Two, and I'm talking normal social grant, finger biometrics are compulsory. Two, if you are applying for the 350 grant, facial recognition is compulsory. So we enroll, and at the back, we also verify. But the other element that we have done is, to that question, for our public-facing staff, we start with them. You can't process a social grant application provided your biometrics have been enrolled, verified by the Department of Home Affairs. But lastly, today as we're talking, with your team, the team is burning midnight oil to try and introduce what we term e-life certification, that is a facial recognition enabled. Where are we going with that? What we try to do is we're trying to transition into an era recipient will be required in the future to live certify themselves annually, in addition to other things that are basically going to unfold. But in the same context, DG, we went to the insurance industry and said to them, if you want to continue shaking hands with us, we want you to change how you do business at the back. We're not going to be, firstly, between last year, sometimes last year we said we no longer want your manual mandates in the form of forms. We said, can you give them to us as electronic documents? They initially scanned them. We then changed to what December and said, we want you to prepare yourselves. From next year, we want mandates to be biometrically, through biometrics. They initially said, no, SASSA, we'll take you to court. We said, okay, we'll see. But they realized that we mean business. This year, from July, we're now receiving biometrically enabled mandates from all insurance companies that are wanting to do business with SASSA. We are now in engagement with the South African Insurance Crime Bureau to piggyback on some of the investigations which they are having on the other end, that we can triangulate that data with us to see if ever we can be able to save state money. So what I'm trying to say is what he's saying, it is possible because I understand them. There's a lot of work that is happening at the background. Some of it may not have come forward, but there is a lot which will make it easier for them when they start running their pilots or go live, because we are a little bit ahead.
And just one quick addition is that when you say those biometrics, do you need a specific machine, or how do we make sure that that doesn't slow things down?
So for facial recognition, we don't need any special machine, as long as there is a device that can...
What's a device? A cell phone?
So it can be a cell phone, it can be a cell phone, it can be a computer, it can be anything that will be able, your face can be verified. If we say blink, smile, take your tongue out.
And for people and we know that there's 95% cell phone coverage in terms of citizens, but people who don't have that?
Maybe I didn't tell you that we're currently running a project in SASSA where we're turning every SASSA office into a Wi-Fi hotspot. So whether you have data or you don't have data, you should be able to go into a SASSA office and do the same.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so what we've heard about is how these examples are going to minimize bureaucratic hurdles for government and for people. We've heard about how it's going to enable smarter planning through better data. We've heard about responsible use of government funds. And we've heard about how these systems have to be secure in order to build public trust. I now want to ask the people that are with us here today in the audience, if you can give us examples in terms of where you think that MzansiXchange can add value. And I think also this is your opportunity to say, where are the challenges that you envisage in terms of data interoperability, in terms of having access to data or sharing data, and examples, if you want to give, of how you see this benefiting your area of work. You are welcome to speak about other issues related to that, but I really want to try and focus on use cases and see whether there's people in the room that want to speak to any of those or are having particular challenges. So let me open it up and see if anyone wants to address those issues. People are very quiet. Thank goodness. DG Tommy is going to set us off, but hopefully others as well.
No, thanks, Tanya, and good morning, everyone. I think while others are warming up, let me take the first opportunity. And I've heard Fanny say they want to invest in, I don't know what system they're looking at, to pick up on biometrics, fingerprints, facial recognition. But already government has that, and that's what MzansiXchange needs to do. If you go to ABIS, and the good news is, Tanya, we have an MOU that we signed with SASSA. So it depends. I'm not sure what fields he wants to look at, because On the basis of that MOU, we're giving them access to what is contained in the MOU. We can't give you beyond what is contained in the MOU because we must always protect the system. There are 63 million South Africans that rely on that system on a daily basis, that have to register birth, that have to take IDs, and there are other people that are verifying, doing verifications. And therefore, we need to make sure that whatever SASSA is looking at, it's what they've signed for in the MOU. Wasim, I know October and November, there's a lot of verifications on the applications on the system. I know already that by January, February, before he pays out, already he's doing verifications. So SASSA has been doing a lot of verifications. If you look at the system at the moment, they're amongst...
I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So SASSA at the moment, they're amongst the most that are doing verifications. And some of the things that we might not want to do, Fanny, is to reinvest in duplicating what is already there. Because at Home Affairs, we already have your facial recognition, Tanya. When you were younger, when you took your first ID, and I can already look at you now, and the system referred to as ABIS is able to say, is this the same person as the first person? And we've just done a very nice exercise on ghost workers with Treasury. And for sure, Ayanda will release the results in the next few months once it's been processed. And that's what we utilized, to look at what is in the system, what is on PESA. But the reality is that we're only using 5% of what Home Affairs has, Fanny. We have data on foreign nationals that sit on the VAS system. It's about 400 that are coming in and out of the country. On the movement control system, we've got about 1.6 billion people that are coming in and out of the country. So that's why I'm saying MzansiXchange. That's where we'll put all our data in so that you are able to verify against a number of databases. We've got information on the national information, in particular for immigrants that are coming into the country. Then you've got those that are permanent residents. You've got those that are naturalized citizens. So on a daily basis, there's about, let me say on the population register, you've got about 75 million South Africans, and then these are either those that are alive or those that have passed on. But in addition, we've got information about those that are permanent residents and those that are naturalized citizens. So my message will be that maybe let's have a discussion with SASSA to look at what fields do they want to look at. It can be that they want to look at everything, and therefore it will be real time, which is what the banks are currently utilizing. Thank you.
Which is such a brilliant example. Thank you, DG, because I think what you're seeing is that that train station is that we don't all need to build different train stations and spend money. You'll be very happy with that, DG Duncan. Spend money on building new train stations. There are existing train stations there that we can utilize in a selective way. And I think that's part of what this is about. But it's a really interesting experience to understand that despite all the work that has already happened on this roadmap, is that there's still those disconnects in terms of how departments are seeing it. And these are departments that are part of the roadmap. So I shudder to think in terms of departments that haven't been on this journey, and this, Mandla, is your change management area which you speak about, because I'm sure that there are many, many departments out there that are not as close to the roadmap, that are actually building their own systems, battling with these things. So it's going to be a massive challenge to overcome. How's that going to happen?
Indeed, it's going to be. But maybe even before I kind of come to that, it's important to indicate that some of the important directive coming from the whatever I spoke about, the direction I spoke about, they need to have a data governance office, they need to have a CDO, is what the directive is saying the accounting officers must do. And they've been given 24 months to do that, in that entire office. Now, I think a couple of things. When we talk about data, data is not necessarily an IT issue. I think we always want to emphasize that. As a result, from a DPSA perspective, we've got a couple of stakeholders that we've got access to. Still, because they are custodian, from an IT perspective, we've got a structure called GTOC. But from a service delivery perspective, there is
GTOC, explain for those
okay.
who don't know.
It's a government IT officers council, basically the CIO council for the public service. We also have got the Batupile champions in departments, responsible service delivery improvement. So those are initial targets. Why, as indicated, as DPSA, those are some of our close stakeholders who are physically located within the various departments. So what about those people? Communicating the fact that there's a directive, ensuring that as part of the public service, in actual fact, one of the deliverables coming from the roadmap is for us to ensure that each and every public servant, at least from the next financial year, they've got a digital target on their PDP. So we're looking at putting related targets onto that. And it cannot start anywhere else lower than an accounting officer in the department. So there must be that alignment. But also training, I mean, we've had numerous players from the private sector who are providing training mainly around data. Yes, of course, there is cybersecurity and AI, but in the context of the convention today, around data, they're providing training on that, and we are busy. I mean, even thanks for the invite. I mean, being here also gives us time to kind of conscientize stakeholders that, by the way, there has been some changes. Data has been elevated. It's not just some kind of a byproduct. We are a service industry as a public service. Let us think as such, and let's leverage that.
Go slowly there. Say that again.
As a public service, we are not different than any other sector. We are about the citizens. We are a service industry. So one of the important things that we must have and really play well in the space is around the management of data. Our data is not spot on. At times, there's a situation where there have been projects in government, they are there, they are standing, unutilized. What was it thinking? What were the insights?
So is there going to be a time where the AG is going to monitor data governance?
We have already had conversations with that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Today being a Thursday, we had a GTOC council meeting on Tuesday this week.
Yeah.
Where obviously they were sharing with us the state of IT in the public service, but long time before, they have seen the directive. We have indicated to them what are some of the things that we expect departments to do. So they're definitely going to be doing that.
And DPME, is it putting performance measures and evaluation mechanisms in place for data management?
So one of the deliverables from the roadmap as well is to establish a national data governance committee.
Right.
And DPSA, DPME, Stats SA, and National Treasury are some of the primary stakeholders that have been identified to participate in that.
Brilliant.
So the idea is to obviously have a stringent approach to management of data in the public service.
Any other inputs, suggestions? Okay, we've got two. One over there, thank you. You've got the mic, and then we'll move to the back. Please introduce yourselves before you start.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mzansi. Mzansi, good morning. This is Jerry Seko from the city of Tshwane, so I'm the host.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for the invite. And this is a very, to me, a catalytic event in the way we do business in the organization. I really see Ayanda is, Dr. Ayanda is nearby. I wonder the replicability of the MzansiXchange DNA that we can implement at the local government level or within any municipality to inculcate a sense of central data repository. That's very key. It's one of my KPIs. I didn't know where to start, so I'm going to be on your case. Number two, I like the opportunities this MzansiXchange provides of cross-pollination. Currently, as the organization, we've got use cases where we struggle to validate this applicant for a municipal service, whether this person is a South African or non-South African. But because the master data is lying with the Department of Housing for this RDP publication, for this social grants that the cities provide. So with MzansiXchange, I see that because I can account for 2 years of going forth, back and forth with Home Affairs with no success. So this is a lead, really. Thirdly, I wish, okay, Mapolop, you are there. And as you talk the public service, I wish it can be inclusive of the local government. Because when I see the pilot incorporates national government structures, when are you gonna bring in this the third tier? If there is any action, if you say Mzansi, you talk national, you talk provincial, you are still floating until you are anchored on the ground within the municipal borders, within the wards, within the regions. So you cannot move forth and leave us behind. So I'm raising a hand on behalf of the city of San Jose. If you need to include the municipality in this pilot, here we are. I do thank you.
We've got a ready use case. We'll come back. We're just going to take 3 questions and then we'll come back to responding. Over to you.
A very good morning. My name is Sandile. I'm recently a recovering public servant. I got in slightly late and I apologize, but my stomach turned as my colleague from SASA spoke about facial recognition and being compulsory for service delivery. How are we putting safeguards to ensure that we protect our society? Because as we've seen the authoritarian regimes of Europe using facial recognition for policing and for pushing police state, if we start to ask our citizens to have facial recognition to get access to services, we are in extremely dangerous territory. And we must recognize, and there's someone who loves data, who loves the efficiency that comes with it, but who's always very, very, very scared of how governments can turn authoritarian, because German government is authoritarian, the UK government is authoritarian, but we never mentioned that. Sorry, my mind is shaking because I'm thinking of what the future will look like if our kids have to access services through their facial recognition with no right to be forgotten digitally by the state. The state can access them anytime when they protest against the very state that sometimes do wrong to people. So we should be very careful.
Yeah, it's a very important warning around the security and the trust in the system. And we've seen actually in a number of governments in the last few weeks how in some areas and jurisdictions, citizens are actually resisting and saying that they don't want to be part of the system. They don't want to have their identities digitally verified. So it is something that is really significant. Any other inputs? And suggestions, there's one at the back there, and then we'll try and respond.
I do apologize, I was quite late myself as well. But I think to the gentleman's comment, I work in Frontier Africa, and obviously South Africa being one of the more developed markets. And when I think of what you're saying, I ask myself about, the rest of the world, what does that look like if we are sort of, saying we completely don't want it? Because it sounded very black and white, it sounded very binary. And I think, you spoke about the right to be forgotten, but I think we should also have sort of the right to opt in, and that should be something that we do talk about. So that's the first one. But secondly, if we look at the realities on the ground, it's all nice to have conversations about data, facial recognition, and a silo, but the realities on the ground, around corruption, ghost payouts, etc., we do need to look at technology and the realities of our particular country. And if I were to choose, on behalf of people, I would say let's opt in. And those people who we could explain to why we would be using facial recognition, what are the pros and cons. I think the benefits at some point outweigh, and I get it, we've got infrastructural issues, we've got issues around technology, etc. But you came in with, and I'll go back to your right to be forgotten, you came in with policy framework. And should we not be looking at how we tweak our policy framework? Should we not be looking at how we strengthen it? I mean, if you look at, like you made a good example, in Europe, you look at the EU is functional and it's working because they've invested in policy. They've invested in how it's actioned. And maybe that's something that we need to be talking about, more strongly. But I can see we'll have a debate. We can talk afterwards. Thank you.
And so not only does it require a huge change management process within the state, it requires a huge change management process within society to convince people why this is important and why it's going to benefit. We are almost out of time, so I'm going to ask if there's anyone that wants to respond to when are we getting down to the local tier? Is that going to be in the next 12 months? Mandla?
In actual fact, my only response to that was, I was just going to say, Ndotso. Yesterday we had that exactly the same conversation, and the conversation was like, when we say national, how does it look like? for when you define it in terms of national and provincial government departments, already there is the council, and therefore you should think differently. Just the day before yesterday. I mean, just the day before today.
Yeah. And then I think just on the governance issue and the security issue is that what's very, very clear is that MzansiXchange, and I think the name is absolutely brilliant because it tells you everything, is that it's a data exchange for South Africa. We've got to make it in a way that's credible from a government efficacy point of view, and we've got to make it in a way that actually is going to meet the citizens and people where they are. So it's an absolutely crucial point that's been raised. I want to round up with a panel. We're out of time, but I think it's really important just to give you one last opportunity to indicate in one word what you think this pilot is going to mean in the next year. So, one word. Shabir, are you ready?
For me, Tanya, I would say really it would improve service delivery. It will bring about the required efficiency and effectiveness to the
Improving
public
service delivery. Thank you.
I think for me, it's the foundation for digital public infrastructure. That's what I see out of it.
Thank you.
So I'll say that, you know, all of this is great, having better data, and but what does it mean, you know? And if it doesn't lead to better policy and better outcomes, then to me it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. So I think it's quite important that it helps the state and society move forward, yeah, and take a leap forward and improve the average experience that citizens have, because we have very low trust at the moment. Yeah.
Shabir?
For me, I think it will be two words: automated defense. And I think this is where I see the future, that through this MzansiXchange, we could use data to really be a prevention tool for some of the many ills we see in society, like fraud, corruption, ghost workers, etc. So I think that's where I see this moving forward. Thanks.
Yeah. And I think on my side, it really brings the wave of looking at how do we get greater accountability, how do we get greater efficiency, and most importantly, greater service delivery. So thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you for demonstrating and explaining how these things are going to work. But I think thank you very much for the indications that have already been provided from others in the room, and I hope there are going to be many, many more around where you see your role in terms of managing data, intersecting with others, and how you become part of this initiative and make sure that this pilot is successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Thank you in no particular order, Fani, Mandla, Shabir, and of course, Wasim, for quite an insightful engagement. And also thanks to you for engaging the audience. It seems there's a lot to do. This is pilot phase 1, but going to 2 by next year, we should certainly have much more improvement in the system. As SASSA wants to introduce programs or systems, Home Affairs says, hold on. There's a progress on that space. We're already working on something. And my worry was, we don't have civil society in the room, but hey, we have an audience that are spokespersons for the civil society, really calling it that there needs to be that inclusion and some caution on how we thread when it comes to data. So thank you so much for all the contributions that you made this afternoon. They gave us their thoughts and building the blocks. And it's clear that as we're listening to them here, there were some disjointments on how one department is thinking about the other on this data issue. But then it came, we thought this was going to happen, and hence we brought someone with an interdepartmental experience to give us a sense on how the working groups have been thinking around the data exchange when it comes to government departments. And ladies and gentlemen, we are so privileged to have Melvin Lubega, who's also in the house, to give us a few remarks. And Melvin is the head of Digital Services Unit at the Presidency. Please put your hands together and help me welcome Melvin.
Need to switch up. Okay, we're in the game. I tried your technique to be broaden the Mzansi use, but it didn't work out, so I'll go back to what's worked for the past. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and partners. It is a privilege to be here at this launch, particularly representing the Presidency and Digital Services Unit, because I think it's such an important milestone. I think to Tanya's point about going from not only, I won't say planning, let's say idea to implementation. I think planning has become a loaded word in the last few moments. But really think about the work that's taken place over a longer period to really come to this moment today. And I like how the last conversation grounded the conversation in real people, because the size of the prize of us not only going from idea to implementation, but from implementation to impact, is 60 million people in South Africa. And so if we just work together to really go forward with this initiative, we can achieve something great at scale that affects real South Africans and real people across our country. On a personal note, many years ago, I was an actuarial science and statistics student at the University of Cape Town, and I came to appreciate the power of data. Not only that data, if used well, can give you an understanding of the world today, but importantly, what the world can be and what's possible. And also for us to reimagine what government services look like. And so today, not only see it as what data we have today, but what data can we have in the future, and how can we use that to do better policy and offer better services to the people more broadly. And I think, as Ayanda highlighted more importantly, is that the exchange isn't just about an application or website. It's really about that secure plumbing that really is the underbelly of our digital nation and transformation thereof. And so when you think about that, you want to think about not only having technology, but think about what technology enables in terms of better services for people when you think of what's possible by having an integrated data exchange that, to the point, speaks across departments, brings together different information into one ecosystem. Because a big part of what we're doing in transforming government is really about coming back to how do we offer services that is truly one person, one touch, and one interface. And by doing so, we don't only improve services, but I think to the points earlier, we improve the trust and accessibility of these services for all South Africans that operate. And when I take the lens of the presidency, the work that we're doing is ultimately a whole-of-government initiative. Ultimately, we exist, particularly in the DSU, the Digital Services Unit, to coordinate the initiatives across different departments, across different parts of government, and across actually South Africa as a whole, to ensure that we're moving in unison. Because the reality is, a change of this nature can't be done in silos. And I think, as mentioned earlier by one of the colleagues on stage, the data already exists, but it's in silos. So the question is, how do you make that data work for us more effectively? What I do like, though, were the certain pledges made by members of the audience to work together. I saw the bridge between National Treasury and NSFAS taking place here as well. So looking forward that beyond this room, we can actually go forward and do more together. But the heart of this work is partnership. And so that's why, even from the presidency perspective, our partnership with National Treasury is so important, both through Operation Vulindlela, which is now in its second phase, and the broader reform agenda, because it takes more than just one individual, one particular entity, one particular government to actually make the change that we're trying to achieve in this particular ecosystem. And it really comes back to understanding where the MzansiXchange fits into the broader digital transformation agenda. And was highlighted earlier, this is ultimately going to be part of and work in partnership with MyMzansi, which will integrate parts of what was mentioned earlier by Shabir, for example, in DigiGov, and bringing those elements together, being the pillars of digital public infrastructure around identity, payments, and the data exchange. But by doing this, the whole intention is to improve the scale and quality of government services that we offer as a nation, and also, in the same vein, improve the reach. But that will require the collaboration and understanding from many partners in this room today. But if we get this right, even with the exchange alone, the size of the prize is immense. And just even from a numbers perspective, I know looking at the incredible website, which I encourage you to scan the QR code and look at, thanks Ayanda and team, is that in Estonia alone, which has been seen as a blueprint with its X-Road, where there are 1,345 years saved in terms of administration admin, or even Brazil more recently, where in one fiscal year they saved 4 billion rand equivalent just by adopting the data exchange more meaningfully. And it's not necessarily about having it, it's about adopting it. It's about how are we not sending emails to Marius, shout out if you're here, to be able to make better decisions as a nation as we go forward. And really that's the tip of the spear of where we go from not only having the concept of an exchange, but ultimately towards the impact of an exchange. And so, as I stand here today, I want to reflect on the momentous nature of this occasion. And what I like is not about technology. It's about people. It's about how do we transform the experience of real citizens, whoever they are, wherever they are, to access government services as a whole. But of course, it wouldn't be possible without key partners. And so I want to give a special thanks to National Treasury, especially DG Peterson for your leadership and partnership, but Ayanda for driving this initiative so well to this particular point and beyond. But also in the same vein, there are many partners in this room who, I won't necessarily mention all of you, but from the government to civil society to private sector to international development organizations who've been part of this journey, but also appreciate it's not necessarily a whole of government initiative, it's a whole of society initiative. And so all of us have a role to play to make sure this is successful, because ultimately, if we get this right, we can transform the next decade of South Africa's development, and I truly believe that. And we can really take what is seemingly an invisible infrastructure and make visible change in real citizens' lives. And so as we go here today, a few use cases came out in the conversations, but let's ask ourselves, how can we take advantage of this exchange and take to the next level? I look forward to continued collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melvin. Thank you so much. Time for Melvin. Some point I was looking for teleporters, thinking Melvin is reading from somewhere, but yes, the guy is so eloquent and knows his story. Thank you so much for that, Melvin. So now we've heard about what the project is all about, as painted by Ayanda on the screen, showing us the interface and how the plan is to go when it comes to the program. Maybe we can switch this one off. Let me try this one due to the intonation that we're getting. So we also heard from the DG who gave us nice opening remarks, followed by building the blocks on how different departments are thinking about this MzansiXchange, particularly how they're thinking about the usage of data for the citizens' empowerment. Melvin gave us a clear case of why is this important when it comes to interdepartmental coordination, working together for the citizens. I think it's only fair that we close this by really asking ourselves, so what? And to help us answer that question, after all said and done, so what? Is none other than the DG of the Home Affairs, the Department of Home Affairs, DG Lubuwani Tomi Makode. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome DG on stage.
Thank you so much, the program director. The so what question is very difficult and complex, but I think we'll attempt to do that. So let me thank all of you first for your attendance and staying the course. Can you give yourself a round of applause? It's never easy to have a program that starts on time and ends on time, and you still have a full audience. So thank you so much. So let me take this opportunity to really thank the following key people. DG Duncan Peterson, and he's been reminding us every week that there's this launch that's coming up. Ayanda, you can see the nudging was from Ayanda. For your keynote address, DG, can we give him a round of applause for that? And I think your keynote address sketches what the entire ecosystem needs to do, including the work that we currently are doing with the Reserve Bank and others with regards to this. But I also want to take this opportunity and thank Tanya Cohen, excellent facilitator for the session that we have. Can we give her a round of applause for that? And then, of course, members of the panel. Quite excellent. Let's give a round of applause for the following people. Mandla Ngobo from the DPSA, who ensures that every month we are paid 1.3 million civil servants and ensures that you get a full salary. So let's thank him for those inputs. Shabir Khan, the Accountant General, who makes sure that every month again, money is transferred to those provinces to run key service delivery initiatives. Thanks, Shabir. And then Fanis Tuha from SASA, that I really want to have an engagement with to persuade him not to invest more on biometrics and fingerprints. That's already there at Home Affairs. Everyone who's in this room, I've got your fingerprints, I've got your picture, I've got data on your relatives, going back to about 1800. So that data is there, and it's manual. And we're grateful, DG. A few years ago, I think 2-3 years ago, you gave us money to digitize those records. So those records are now digitized. So let's thank Fanny Stucha from SASSA. And then one of my clients, Wasim Karim, who really downloads a lot of information to verify students for the excellent inputs, Wasim. And then, of course, Melvin, who really sits in a very, 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 very privileged position as leader of the Digital Service Unit, which is located in the presidency. And I can tell you, coordination is very hard. Coordination in government is very hard because there are two ways, DG, you can do coordination. It's either through legislation, which is easier because you are compelled by the law to do what is prescribed. The second one, it's where DG Peterson sits, through the budget, through an allocation. So without that, and he does not have a budget, that's the reality. He does not have a law that says you shall, as a department, do that. But he's been very excellent in terms of coordinating all of us. Thank you so much, Melvin. And then, of course, Dr. Ayanda, who's been quite instrumental in getting us, all of us here and ensuring that this takes off. And I'm glad, DG, that you have set up this unit within Treasury to do data analytics. The world is changing at a very fast pace. In fact, in 2019, Cabinet approved a white paper on science, technology, and innovation. Chapter 2 of that white paper, it's titled Looking into the Future. And we have not done that for quite some time. All these issues are there, whether it's AI, data analytics. 2019 already, you had a white paper, but the pace at which we are moving, it's at a very slow pace. So having thanked all the speakers and all the stakeholders that are here for the MzansiXchange pilot launch, which I think is quite a key pillar for digital transformation, and DG indicated that the President did launch the digital roadmap, which was approved by Cabinet much earlier this year. And I think, DG, through what the panel members were saying, through MzansiXchange, which is led by yourselves, of course, with the support of other government departments, I think there's a demonstration of how we can, through this initiative, be able to ensure that there's interfaces. At Home Affairs, we say interfaces. It says interoperability, which is more or less the same thing, to use those systems. But ensure that citizen-centered data exchange happens real time. And I've heard the issue that Tswane has raised, and I suppose it's something that we need to attend to. But ensure that there's evidence-based decision-making. That's why we collect all the data. How do we ensure that there's proper planning? And then, of course, real-time verification between government departments. And of course, the key is to ensure that there's improved service delivery and ensure that there's responsible digital governance in South Africa. Now, what is then the role of Home Affairs in digital transformation? And you have heard so much about digital identity. And DG Peters spoke about the example of Estonia. I had an opportunity to visit with the minister in Estonia. And one of the things that minister kept saying, can you ask DG for the authorities to take us to a Home Affairs office so that we can look at what they do? That was the first ask. The second ask was, can they take us to one of their borders? And of course, their border is with Russia, and we went when the war had started. And the Minister of Justice, who's responsible for digital transformation, said, but why do you want to go to a Home Affairs office? And the minister said, I want to compare what you guys do, the long queues, and so on and so forth. He says, we don't have such. All the services are on your phone. It's a secured platform. And he said, what about the borders? The BMA is struggling, the Border Management Authority, to deal with illegal migration at the various ports of entry. He said, no, but we've got cameras. We don't have anyone there. And everything is automated. So we don't have to come to Treasury and ask money for the BMA, if we take that example, DG. So the Department of Home Affairs wishes at this point to really reiterate, Ayanda, our commitment towards developing a digital identity system, which is one of the foundation pillars of the roadmap. Now, as the lead department for digital ID, I think we will be able to deliver this game changer. In the MTDP, we've said over a number of years, but with what we know now, we should be able to deliver digital identity in the coming few months. That's the commitment that we can do. Now, that's of course mandated by the Identification Act, which empowers us to do that work. I think we already have a strong foundation for this transition. I earlier on, in the input that I made for SASSA, indicated that already we have 78 million data of South Africans, permanent residents, naturalized citizens that are either alive or have passed on. That is currently what the city of Tshwane wants to exercise. But this transition, DG, it's a must. As I've said, the world is changing at a very fast pace. If you were to look at the investments that are going into AI, I think Google has set up about treasury chest of about 85 billion. So everyone is investing, and if we don't, we will be outpaced. And of course, digital identity, including the progression to a secured digital wallet, will reduce the burden of citizens carrying a number of cards, a number of documents with them. Of course, for Home Affairs, it means no more long queues outside our offices, because with your phone, with your device, you should be able to apply for any product and be able to get it delivered at your doorstep. That's what we're trying to do. Instead of you visiting our 412 offices, including one that is at Mainland Mall. Of course, we'll have to look at what do we then do, how do we then reskill and upskill our staff with regards to that. The same with the driver's license. It's something that can be included as part of that digital wallet. Now, this work that we currently are doing, and we've already seen, Ayanda, through the agreement that we've signed with 7 banks and a number of verification agencies. Of course, they were paying us far lesser. They were paying about 15 cents for a verification. And of course, they charge you more to do the verification. We've just increased it up to, from 15 cents, that was set up 10 years ago, to 10 rands. And they were very angry with that. But over a number of engagements with them, the 7 big banks have signed with us, including new ones, such as Capitec and African Bank. And Capitec has said, but you don't have to build new infrastructure, DG. We have 880 Capitec branches that we can utilize to ensure that you are able to derive services similarly with FNB. So in conclusion, I wish to indicate that let's appreciate the work that's been done and also reiterate the department's support for this roadmap implementation and the launch of MzansiXchange. It's a precursor, as we say, used to say at the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, for pilots. It's a precursor that will lead us to bigger things, and of course the broader rollout. As the DHA, we will participate in the pilot as a use case, but we'll also ensure that the secured data access is done responsibly. And of course, we do support, as a department, the whole of government approach to digital transformation in line with Mervyn has said, under the theme, one person, one government, one touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, DG, for the closing remarks of what we hear today. So now we're gonna go for lunch, but before we do, some logistical details. On my screen, they're gonna beam a Menti, which I understand it's a code where will tell us what breakaway rooms you will be in after the break. So I think there should be a slide there that shows the details on how you can have your QR code on the breakaway rooms. So after the break, you're gonna go to breakaway rooms where we're gonna have different sessions, and you'll choose which room you'll be in. So the closing remarks are not to say goodbye, are here to say we should be back after lunch. So don't go anywhere. So lunch will be served at the restaurant, just past the reception. As you go out, you turn right, past the reception, and there is a restaurant where you're gonna have a lunch, I understand, fully paid? Fully paid, yeah. Right. Parking tickets, those that are using cars and they parked at the mall, please it's very important that you get those parking tickets validated at the reception before you leave. Otherwise, you'd have to pay out of your own pocket. And yeah, please stay for the breakaway rooms. It's quite important. So whilst we let the online audience to, we're going to terminate our online service now. We wish them goodbye. Thank you for joining us. The in-person audience will continue in their breakaway rooms. So don't leave anytime soon in those that are here. But for those online and everyone here, please remember to go to the MzansiXchange website. It's MzansiXchange.treasury.gov.za. That is MzansiXchange.treasury.gov.za. The email is MzansiXchange@treasury.gov.za. That is MzansiXchange@treasury.gov.za. We'll go for lunch, and 1:30 we continue. We don't come back at 1:30. We start at 1:30. So the expectation is that by 1:30 we are all ready and good to go. So enjoy your lunch until we see you on the other side. Enjoy. After lunch, please come back in this room. After lunch, everyone should be here at 1:30 in this room.